What's happening, family? Back again for another devotion here right after Christmas. Today we're going to be looking at Romans 7, verse 21. The Apostle Paul is speaking here when he says, "So I find this law at work." He says, although I want to do good, evil is always right there with me. He says, "For in my inner being, I delight in God's law." So, we're all ex something at the end of the day. And we may have conditioned our minds to believe that, we're over it. We pass whatever it is or whoever it is we used to be. When the truth of the matter is sometimes there are some signs showing otherwise. And so we liken ourselves, or I liken who we are to washing dishes, if you will. A lot of times you get in there, you get that water nice and hot, you get those suds going, you get the busting those suds, and you get that towel out and you get the scrubbing and rubbing your life away. And everything is all good because everything is coming clean. But then you run into those pots, those pots and pans. They're a little bit more unruly than your normal dishes, if you will. And so you find that not even due to lack of effort on your part, but it's just that, your process may need to change because they're not getting as clean as they normally would. And so we have to find ourselves in that situation when we're dealing with a different dynamic. Sometimes our process needs to change, because if not, we're going to end up with the same result of what we had before. And so now, here the Apostle Paul is showing us a human side of himself, where he's saying to us, man, look, I'm saved. Let's be clear. I know I'm saved. However, I'm still living in the same flesh that I was in before I got saved, before salvation. So he said, I know who I am. I know who I used to be. So he's just saying, look, I'm conscious of the fact that I'm saved, but I'm also conscious of the fact that that flesh that I was living in, I still live in that same flesh. And so he's introducing to us the two natures that exist within us, the godly nature, which most consider to be that good nature, and then our sinful nature, or that evil, or that bad nature of ourselves. And the point of it all is that we must recognize that even though we are saved by grace through faith, that at any given moment, we can fall victim because we still have spiritual residue from our past. And so anytime we can fall victim of our sinful nature. So, you may have used to cuss before, or fight, or whatever the case may be. And so now you're saved. You don't do that anymore. You don't do it like you used to. And the truth of the matter is there could be some circumstance in life that pops up, that make you feel like your first reaction is one of what you used to do. And so that's the thing that we have to find ourselves being careful of. So the text says here that evil is always present. And present in the Greek is parakomai, which means to lie near or to be within reach, to be close to. And so in other words, evil is always ready to run us from our godly nature, our good nature, if you will, to our sinful nature, or that bad or that evil nature. So we have to be careful in our development and in our growth in Christ, and how we execute, who we are in Christ. And since we still have some spiritual residue from our past, we have to become very conscious of our weaknesses and not allow ourselves to fall to temptation. I'm saying that it's in light of a lot of the news and sports that's been going on here over the last week or so. We just got to be careful of that. We got to stay conscious of it. So instead, we have to, imitate Christ. We have to imitate Paul, really, in this text where he says, "For in my inner being, I delight in God." And so here what he's saying is, man, I'm finding joy and satisfaction on the inside. And he's excited about God's plan and where God is having him go. And so we have to make sure that we stay true to that at the end of the day. And we have to find joy in our hearts, and we got to want to be transformed into the image of Christ in all that we do. So now spiritual residue is not always a bad thing either, because it can help you stay grounded and never lose sight of who you become or where you come from. And so if you know anything about cast iron skillets, cast iron cookware, if you will, it's almost a requirement that you don't thoroughly clean these things like normal dishes. And the reason why is because the seasoning that you cook with and that marinates within that skillet, so it always provides a stick resistant coating, if you will, to help the cookware last, to help it mature as it's supposed to. So that's almost a requirement of something that has to happen all the time. And so now, as a result of that, you may not ever be able to escape the past. And if we put it into right perspective, our past can be something that'll thrust us into becoming a better person and take us to higher heights, in who we are and what we're doing, higher heights in God, if you will. And it can keep us in proper context, keep us in alignment with what God has called us to do. So your past can create a protective barrier, if you will, in your heart and in your mind to keep you from those evil desires. So it's not always a bad thing, but don't fool yourself into thinking that now that you are in Christ, that you are invincible, that everything is all good and you can't fall, because that's not true. And so, because evil is always right there, it's always present, it's always within reach. So we all have to keep that spiritual residue and keep that consciousness about ourselves to keep us in alignment in what it is that we've been called to do. So now, there's a situation roughly about a year ago when my then 10-month-old son was in the barbershop with my wife. And this grown man came and punched my son in the face. And so now I grew up in 3rd Ward, in the hood. And everything wasn't always all good, and not even with me. And so my initial response was one of a sinful nature, and I have to be honest about that. However, because of who I am now, there was still some other spiritual residue that resists within me. Residue is just evidence of something that's been there before. I mean, it is gone, but it's still present. And so it's just like when you're driving your car and you're about to run out of gas, and those fumes and stuff that are going through your tank, you're like, Lord, if I can just make it to this gas station. And there's something about those fumes and stuff that still resonate in that tank that allow your vehicle to keep pushing until you can get a refill. And so that's the thing that helped me. All of what I've put in me, with my relationship and my walk in God, helped me get past that situation and not act out in a way that I normally would have if I was in 3rd Ward back in the day. So all glory be to God that I was able to pull together and keep it in order, and not do the things that came to mind in that situation. And I just want to bring that up because being in the position that you're in, being in a high profile position, there's a lot of things that's going to test you, that's going to try you. People are going to test you and try you. And you have to keep in mind and maintain your consciousness about that residue that exists within you and how you're going to maintain, because it's so many eyes that are looking, so many eyes that are paying attention. So it's not that you can't act out. It's not that you can't respond. It's really more so about how you're doing and do it in its proper context and in its proper place. So stay conscious of that, and don't lose yourself in situations that present themselves. Be conscious of what's going on and make sure that you think carefully before you actually respond, because how you respond and when you respond is the most important thing. God bless.